Good morning, beloved child of God. Before anything else rushes into your thoughts, before the world even has a chance to speak, heaven is already waiting for you to respond. God's presence is near, gentle as morning light, faithful as the breath you just took. Let your first words today rise like incense, holy, surrendered, full of quiet trust. Every day begins with a choice, to chase the noise or to sit with the one who calms it. When your feet hit the floor, something in your soul is already searching for peace, for grounding, for meaning. That peace won't be found in your inbox, your to-do list, or the morning headlines. It's found in Him alone. He waits not in loud places, but in the stillness where faith is born. The world tells us to hurry, to perform, to prove, but the Spirit whispers something altogether different. Be still and know. In the silence of surrender, you are met by the power of heaven. God is not a task to check off. He is the breath that gives every task meaning. To begin with Him is not weakness, it is wisdom. Matthew 6:33 says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." These are not just words for Sundays, they are orders for every sunrise. When you put God first, you are not losing time, you are aligning with divine timing. His hands are already shaping what you cannot see. Daniel, exiled in Babylon, did not let the threats around him silence the rhythm of prayer within him. He knelt before open windows and poured his soul out to God, even knowing it might cost him his life. He did not wait until the day quieted. He created that quiet with his prayer, and in doing so he moved heaven more than any army ever could. There are lions in every life, fears, deadlines, temptations, unanswered questions. But when you begin with God, you tame what would devour you. Your soul doesn't need more information. It needs intimacy with the one who made it. Before the world grabs your attention, let God hold your heart. Prayer isn't an emergency exit. It's the entrance to holy alignment. It's where you exchange your anxiety for assurance, your doubt for direction, your striving for surrender. God longs to hear you before anyone else does. He wants to be your first thought, not your last resort. You feel scattered, exhausted, and pulled in too many directions. But the Lord is inviting you to build a new rhythm, one where prayer comes before pressure. If this speaks to your heart, type in the comments, "Lord, I begin with you." Then tell us, what are you praying for today? Let us join you in faith and make this sacred pause the beginning of something holy. Even now, heaven leans close to your whisper. Your tears are understood. Your sighs are translated. Your silence is enough. There is no wrong way to begin if your heart is truly seeking. The God who spun galaxies is not offended by your slowness. He's drawn to your desire. Maybe your hands are shaking today, your mind cluttered, your heart aching with what-ifs. But still, you showed up to meet Him. Still, you chose prayer over panic. And that single act of surrender is enough to shift the weight of your whole day. God sees what no one else sees. The invisible battles, the emotional fatigue, the strength it took just to get out of bed. He doesn't rush you. He doesn't rebuke you. He gathers you. He strengthens you. This morning, don't pray because you have to. Pray because you get to. Because the King of all creation loves when you start the day by simply saying, "I'm here." And when you do, He answers, "So am I. I never left." This is not just a routine. This is relationship. Let peace be the first voice you listen to today. Let surrender be the first act you offer. Let His word be the first truth you feed your soul. In doing so, you will not just survive this day. You will walk through it covered in grace. You may not have every answer, but you have access to the one who does. You may not know what this day holds, but you know who holds you. And when you pray first, you don't walk into the day alone. You walk in with the power of heaven. Every battle bows before a heart that bows before God. Let this be your beginning, not your backup plan. Let prayer be your first breath, not your final attempt. When you choose Him before the noise, before the screen, before the rush, everything else begins to fall into place. Because God honors the one who always prays first. Sometimes the hardest part of the day is the first moment. The moment you choose between sacred stillness and the spinning wheel of everything waiting to be done. But heaven waits for you in that very first breath, eager to wrap you in peace before the pressures arrive. God is not a distant echo in the afternoon. He is the quiet voice at the very start, offering rest before rhythm. When you begin with Him, you are building your day upon rock, not sand. There is power in spiritual positioning, in beginning at the feet of Jesus instead of chasing the winds of circumstance. You may not be able to control what comes your way today, but you can control who you surrender to first. And when that surrender belongs to God, your burdens become lighter even before they lift. You're not asking for an easier day. You're asking for a stronger spirit to walk through it. The Lord honors early devotion, not by the clock, but by the posture of the heart. A heart that says, "Before I do anything else, I'll meet with you." A heart that wakes with worship instead of worry, praise instead of panic, trust instead of tension. That heart will always be met by God's presence, for He never denies the seeking soul. Daniel did not wait for safety to be guaranteed before he prayed. He chose God first, knowing danger would follow. His faith was not conditional, it was foundational. He knew the lions were real, but so was the faithfulness of the one who held his future. And when he opened his window toward heaven, he wasn't just praying, he was declaring who ruled his day. You are invited to the same boldness, the same daily courage, the same quiet rebellion against fear and urgency. When you rise to pray, you remind every worry that your strength comes from above, not from within. You teach your heart to depend not on logic or preparation, but on the grace that covers you like morning dew. This is not weakness, this is wisdom. The Spirit of God moves where He is welcomed, and that welcome is strongest in the soul that seeks Him first. Every time you pray before you plan, before you post, before you panic, heaven opens just a little wider. The veil between earth and eternity becomes thin, and suddenly your room becomes a holy sanctuary. Prayer is the gate through which peace walks in. The truth is, you don't need the world's permission to pause and be still. You don't need to have all the answers to be held by the one who is never uncertain. God is not rushing you. He's meeting you in the calm before the call, in the hush before the hurry. He is not impressed by your performance, but He is deeply moved by your presence. Each morning is a chance to begin again, to silence the voices of doubt, to shift your attention to the one who knows your beginning and your end. He doesn't expect perfection, just your presence. And when you give Him your first, He takes care of the rest in ways you'll only understand in hindsight. He multiplies what you surrender and redeems what you cannot fix. Let your morning become a pattern of trust, a sacred rhythm that aligns your soul with heaven's cadence. It doesn't take hours or eloquence. It takes intention. It takes a heart willing to say, "I'm not strong enough on my own, but I believe you are." That is the kind of honesty God rushes to fill. Even in your silence, He hears the ache behind your breath, the longing behind your stillness. He reads what your words cannot say, and responds not with judgment but with tenderness. His mercy is new, not because you earned it, but because He delights to give it. And every time you turn to Him first, that mercy meets you again. There is nothing you will face today that has caught God off guard. He has already gone before you, mapped the path, prepared the answers, softened the blows. Your job is not to see it all, but to stay close to the one who does. And when you stay close, you walk in a confidence this world cannot steal. Let your routine become an altar. Let your habits bend toward heaven. Let your mind be trained not by the tension of the world, but by the truth of the Word. The more you begin with God, the more you'll notice He was always beginning something in you. There is no better foundation than prayer, no firmer footing than faith, no greater alignment than choosing God first. The world will try to convince you that prayer can wait, but the soul knows otherwise. The soul knows it cannot rise without first kneeling. And once you've tasted that quiet strength, you will never begin another day the same way again. To pray first is not just a spiritual habit. It is an act of holy resistance against the chaos that tries to steal your clarity. It's a bold declaration that your identity is not defined by deadlines, tasks, or titles, but by divine intimacy. It tells heaven and hell that your soul will not be moved by the noise of this world, and in that stillness, God meets you with strength greater than your circumstance. Some mornings you may feel too tired, too overwhelmed, or too distracted to speak. And yet even in that weariness, your soul can still whisper, "God, I'm here." That whisper is enough. He doesn't need eloquence. He responds to sincerity. Even the groan of a burdened heart becomes a sacred song when it's lifted to Him first. The truth is, your first thoughts often reveal your first allegiance. When you wake up already anxious, already scrolling, already racing, you're letting the world script your soul's narrative. But when you wake and say, "God, I choose you first," you flip the script and write a new beginning, one soaked in grace, not fear. Daniel's story reminds us that consistency in prayer builds courage in pressure. He didn't pray because he felt strong, he prayed because he knew where his strength came from. And it was that habit, that holy rhythm, that prepared him to face lions without losing peace. Prayer was his anchor, not his last hope. God doesn't want to be added to your schedule. He wants to become the center of it. When He is first, everything else flows in divine order. You'll be surprised how much clarity arrives when you stop trying to control and start allowing Him to carry. And even when the day unfolds differently than you planned, your heart will remain steady because you started in the secret place. The enemy fears the believer who wakes up and prays before anything else, because that believer is no longer reacting to life. They are responding from the throne room. That believer isn't just living, they are walking in spiritual authority. And authority begins with alignment. Prayer in the morning is not about getting everything you want. It's about surrendering everything you are. It's a quiet laying down of your fears, your agenda, your image, your pride. In return, you pick up peace, wisdom, presence, and purpose. You exchange burden for blessing without even knowing when the shift happened. Even when you don't feel it, every time you pray first, the atmosphere around you shifts. Angels are assigned, doors begin to move, divine protection is activated over what you cannot see. Heaven starts responding to a heart that seeks God before anything else. It's not just spiritual, it's strategic. Your morning becomes a meeting place with the Most High. The bed becomes an altar. The silence becomes sanctuary. And in that place, God whispers answers to questions you hadn't even asked yet. When you put God first, you are not being overly religious. You are being radically wise, because you know that without Him, you are a branch without the vine. You know that your peace is fragile without His presence, and you are not ashamed to admit you need Him more than anything. Let no guilt enter your soul for the days you've forgotten to pray. Today is a new beginning. Grace covers every missed moment and welcomes you back without shame. God is not keeping score. He is keeping the door open, and it's wide open for you right now. So rise and return, again and again, to the place of stillness. Make it a daily rhythm, a sacred habit, a lifestyle of first things first. You don't need a perfect place or perfect words, only a willing heart. The Lord will meet you where you are, and begin to build you from the inside out. There is no burden you carry that cannot be lifted by beginning with God. No worry that cannot be silenced when your soul aligns with His Spirit. He is ready before you are, eager to walk beside you in every detail of your day. But the journey begins with the first prayer. Some days begin heavy, even before your feet touch the floor. The weight of yesterday's pain or tomorrow's worry meets you in the silence. But even in that early heaviness, the invitation still stands. Come to me, all who are weary. You are not meant to carry this day alone, not when the everlasting arms are stretched wide, waiting to lift you. And when you begin with God, your burden becomes the very place where He builds strength. There is something sacred about the way God meets the tired heart that chooses Him anyway. It may not be loud or dramatic, but it is holy. His presence seeps into the quiet corners of your soul and steadies the places that felt unraveling. And even before the circumstances change, your heart already starts to rise. Morning prayer isn't just tradition, it's transformation. It's where brokenness becomes beauty, fear becomes faith, and questions become quiet. Trust. Every whispered "Lord, help me," is met by a Father who answers before you even finish the sentence. And when you make him your first pursuit, he makes your path straight, even if you can't yet see the road ahead. Daniel knew that spiritual consistency would always cost something in a world that worships convenience. Yet he chose to open his window toward heaven, even when the law said to close it. He didn't negotiate with fear, he responded in faith. And that response became the doorway to divine protection. When you pray first, you step out of the rhythm of the world and into the rhythm of the kingdom. You stop surviving your days and start stewarding them. Each breath becomes intentional. Each decision becomes covered. Each burden becomes carried by God's own hand. There's nothing more powerful than a surrendered beginning. You don't need a perfect plan today, you need a grounded spirit. You don't need to know how everything will unfold. You need to know who goes before you. That knowing comes through prayer, through putting God first before you try to fix or force. And in that surrender, peace will flood your atmosphere. Heaven always notices when you pause before you push, when you kneel before you run, when you seek before you speak. You are not wasting time, you are redeeming it. You are not falling behind, you are rising above. You are not weak, you are wise beyond this world. Sometimes your greatest strength will be in choosing to stop before the world tells you to start. To say, God, I won't take one step without you. That moment becomes a declaration of spiritual authority. A line in the sand that says, I belong to God, not to this chaos. And heaven moves in response to that kind of bold peace. There's a reason Jesus often slipped away early to pray, even while the world begged for his attention. He knew what we forget, that power doesn't flow from public approval but from private communion. Your strength today will not come from how much you accomplish, but from how much you abide. You are not here to impress, you are here to remain. You may not hear thunder or see visions when you pray, but that doesn't mean nothing's happening. Roots are growing deep beneath the surface, anchoring your faith for days you haven't yet faced. God is building something unshakable inside you, one prayer at a time. And every morning that begins with him is another stone laid in the foundation of your purpose. The enemy would love for you to rush past the quiet moments, to drown out the Spirit's whisper with the world's roar. But when you stop and pray first, you starve fear of its voice and feed your soul with truth. That kind of prayer is not passive, it's warfare, and you fight not with fists but with faith. Let your mornings become sacred altars, not filled with performance but presence. Let your home be a temple, your breath be worship, your silence be strength. You don't have to earn your way to God each day. You just have to turn toward him. And when you do, you'll find he was already waiting. Every morning is an offering, a chance to place your heart on the altar and say, here I am, Lord, before anything else I choose you. You don't have to be strong or certain or ready. You only need to be willing. His grace will do the rest. He honors what begins in prayer. The promise remains. Seek first, and all these things shall be added. Not as a transaction, but as a divine order. Peace follows presence. Let prayer be your compass today, your first language, your trusted path, because when you pray first, everything else can finally take its proper place. There is a divine rhythm to the soul that begins every day in prayer, a rhythm that flows not with chaos, but with calm clarity. When you anchor your first thoughts in the presence of God, everything else begins to fall into proper alignment. You no longer react from emotion, you respond from peace. You are not rushing to catch up. You are walking in step with the Spirit. The world teaches you to move fast, fix things quickly, and carry the weight quietly. But God invites you to move slowly, trust deeply, and lay every burden at his feet. In the secret place of morning prayer, your soul is re-centered and your priorities are redefined. Suddenly, the most urgent thing is no longer the most important. The most important thing becomes the most sacred, being with him. You don't need a stage to worship, just space in your heart. You don't need the perfect words, just an open spirit. God is not moved by performance, he is drawn to presence. And your presence, offered sincerely, is all he asks. Daniel had no audience when he prayed, no applause, no visible rewards, yet heaven watched, listened, and responded with divine power. His windows were open. But his prayer was never about appearance. It was about dependence, the kind that cannot be faked. And because he began with God, God stood with him when others bowed to fear. So much of life tries to convince you that you must be your own provider, your own protector, your own planner. But when you begin your day in prayer, you remember who truly holds all things together. Your shoulders were never meant to carry the weight of outcomes. You were created to cast your cares, to trust your Father, to walk as a child of promise. And it is in that remembering that rest returned. There is no formula to morning prayer, only faith. Faith that God is near before you feel it. Faith that he hears before you speak. Faith that he moves before you even know what you need. To pray first is not only spiritual, it is strategic. It builds a hedge around your heart before the arrows of the day can find their way in. It sets a fire in your spirit before the cold winds of doubt begin to blow. It roots you in truth so deeply that no lie can easily shake you. Even when you feel like your prayers are small or scattered, they are being gathered by the one who bottles every tear and writes every word upon his heart. Nothing spoken to him in love is ever lost. No moment of seeking goes unseen. Every simple prayer becomes a stone in the altar of your intimacy with him. Let your soul rise before the sun does. Let worship be the light that fills the room before the world wakes. Let the stillness before the scroll be your sacred pause, because that moment sets the tone for everything else. You are not just starting your day, you are establishing spiritual territory. You are declaring, "This day belongs to the Lord." You are claiming peace before the world offers panic, and you are setting a boundary that nothing gets your heart before God does. Don't let the enemy convince you that you're too busy to pray, you're too loved not to, you're too covered in grace, not to turn back to the one who gave it. Even on your messiest mornings, God is more interested in your heart than your schedule. He knows when your soul is hungry, and he is always ready to feed it. There is a wisdom that comes only through early communion. Not intellectual wisdom, but heart wisdom. A still, small knowing that God is weaving things together in the unseen. A comfort that your future is not in your hands but in his. And a strength that comes not from striving but from surrender. The more you begin with him, the more you realize there is no other way to begin. Not if you want to walk in power, not if you want to carry peace, not if you want to live with holy clarity in a world full of noise. So today, rise not in stress, but in surrender. Rise not in dread, but in delight. Rise not in confusion, but in communion. For the Lord your God is already waiting, and he loves to be first. To give God your first breath is to declare that he holds your every breath. It is to say that nothing today can offer you what his presence freely gives. Before the voices of the world enter, you've already chosen the voice that matters most. That choice changes everything, even if nothing around you has changed yet. Prayer isn't always loud or long. Sometimes it's just the quiet lifting of your heart toward heaven before your feet meet the floor. Sometimes it's a sigh in the silence, a whispered, "Help me, Lord," a single tear that speaks what words cannot. And even then, he responds, because he knows the shape of your surrender, even when you can't express it. When you put God first, you don't make the day perfect. You make it anchored. You give your soul a center, your mind a compass, your heart a shield. You walk into the hours ahead, not empty, but filled. And that fullness flows into how you think, speak, move, and love. Daniel didn't pray because he felt brave. He prayed because he refused to be ruled by fear. His courage wasn't forged in the lion's den. It was formed in the morning stillness, where he knelt again and again. He faced the day's greatest threats by first seeking the one who was greater. And that rhythm didn't just protect him, it promoted him. You may not be standing before lions today, but you might be facing something that feels just as fierce. Uncertainty, exhaustion, decisions you don't want to make. Begin with God anyway. Let him remind you that he is your defender, your wisdom, your sustainer. The strength you need will not come from overthinking. It will come from abiding. Your time with God is never wasted, never ignored, never forgotten. In every moment you pray, something eternal is happening, inside you and around you. You're not just asking for help, you're aligning with heaven's heartbeat, and that alignment is where peace takes root. The enemy will always try to distract you from the very thing that grounds you. He will whisper that there's no time, that you're already late, that prayer can wait. But every time you resist that pull and turn back to God first, you win a victory the world cannot see. You rise with invisible armor, clothed in grace, covered in strength. Prayer doesn't remove every storm, but it places you inside the eye of it, calm while the winds rage. You are not untouched by life, but you are unshaken by it, because the one who calms seas also calms souls, and he is never late to the place where you invite him first. Let this morning be sacred, not out of routine, but out of reverence. Let this beginning be a return, not to rules, but to relationship. You are not coming to prove yourself. You are coming to be reminded of who you already are. A beloved child, heard by heaven, held by grace. The strength to love difficult people, to forgive what hurts you, to face what scares you. It flows from this well, and you don't have to dig deep for it. You just have to draw near. The river is already flowing. God is already speaking, and the more you begin with Him, the more clearly you'll hear. When you open your hands in prayer, you release the illusion of control and receive the certainty of care. His care is not distant or general, it is personal, intimate, exact. He knows what this day will ask of you, and He is ready to provide. But you must first choose Him over the noise. Let your alarm be a call to worship. Let your first sip of water be a reminder of the living water that satisfies your soul. Let the rising sun remind you that His mercies are new not only in promise but in presence. He is here, right now, ready to walk with you. You don't need to feel strong to begin in prayer. You only need to feel surrendered. The rest will come, the clarity will rise, and the presence of the Lord will make even the most ordinary morning feel like holy ground. There are mornings when you rise feeling strong, full of clarity, eager for what's ahead, and still you must pray first, because strength without surrender becomes self-reliance, and that is a weight no soul was designed to carry. Even your best days need heaven's alignment. Even joy needs an altar. And there are other mornings when rising feels like climbing out of a deep, invisible fog, when your heart is heavy, your thoughts unclear, and even prayer feels far away. But those are the mornings when grace leans in close, when the Spirit groans on your behalf, interpreting every ache as a cry for help, and God in His mercy meets you in that weakness with more strength than you can fathom. Morning prayer is not for the perfect, it is for the honest, the ones willing to say, Lord, I don't know how to carry this, and lay it down before anything else. The ones who show up before they've figured it all out, the ones who choose presence over performance, intimacy over image. To seek God first is not to avoid the world, it is to face it clothed in heaven's armor. You may still walk into meetings, conversations, challenges, and tension, but you no longer walk in alone. You bring with you the quiet confidence that comes from divine communion, the kind that shifts rooms and calms storms, not because you are powerful, but because you are anchored. When Daniel rose to pray, he wasn't avoiding reality, he was inviting a higher one into his own. He knew the laws written against him, knew the cost of consistency, but prayed anyway, and because he prayed first, heaven responded with power that confounded kings. That kind of power still moves in the life that makes room for God before all else. When you make God your first audience, your heart no longer bends to the applause or criticism of others. You are steadied in identity, rooted in truth, guarded by peace. What once shook you now passes through you without owning you, because your first response was not fear, it was faith. You were never meant to run into battle without your covering. Morning prayer is not a religious duty. It is spiritual protection. It sets your tone, your pace, and your posture. It reminds your soul who is truly in charge. Let no shame creep in for the mornings you missed, the prayers you forgot, the starts that felt rushed. God's love doesn't run on your schedule. It waits without weariness. The door is never locked, even when you haven't knocked in days. And every time you return, He meets you with mercy, not disappointment. This is what it means to put Him first. Not that you are always perfect, but that your heart returns to Him as its true home, that before anything else defines your day, you let Him define your identity, that before anyone else hears your voice, He hears your surrender, and in that place, you find a peace that no circumstance can steal. He is not waiting for you to feel holy. He is waiting for you to be real. Your honesty is the soil where intimacy grows, and the more you give Him the first moments of your day, the more your entire life begins to bear the fruit of His Spirit. Love, joy, peace. These are not reactions. They are results of remaining. Let your mornings become your garden, your soul a soil of trust, your words the seeds of worship. In that sacred ground, the Lord plants what will carry you through every hour ahead. You don't need to see the whole harvest to trust the one who waters it. Just begin and trust that He is already doing more than you know. Even silence can be prayer when your spirit is listening. Even stillness can be surrender when your heart is open. Even groaning can be holy when it's offered to the one who understands it fully. You are never too far to return to your need. So today, once again, begin with Him. Not because it's easy, not because you always feel like it, but because your soul was created for communion, and the morning is your invitation to return. Sometimes you begin in silence because the words aren't there yet. Only the ache, the question, the waiting. And yet even then, the heavens lean low to listen, not to the sound of your voice, but to the surrender of your heart. God is not bound by eloquence, He is moved by honesty. And in that quiet, He writes peace into the pages of your soul. To pray first is to place your identity before your agenda, your heart before your habits, your spirit before your striving. It's not about pausing life, it's about placing life in holy hands. You don't lose time when you pray. You redeem it. You give your day a name before the world tries to name it for you. Jesus rose early to pray, not because He lacked strength, but because He knew where strength came from. He wasn't escaping responsibility. He was anchoring His purpose. Before He healed the sick or taught the crowds, He sat in stillness with the Father, and that rhythm became the wellspring of everything else. You don't have to imitate perfection. You are invited into presence. You don't need to prove your faith. You just need to show up in it. The messy, honest, barely awake you is still exactly who God longs to meet each morning. He is not waiting for performance. He's waiting for permission. There is holy power in a schedule rearranged to make room for the sacred, in alarms that remind you of purpose, not pressure, in moments of prayer that set the tone for everything to come. You are building a lifestyle of intimacy, not a checklist of obligation. Some days your prayer will be quiet, others it will be fire. Some days you will weep, others you will rise in praise before your coffee even cools. Every prayer in every form is a thread that ties your life to heaven's heart, and every thread becomes part of a greater tapestry you won't fully see until glory. Daniel didn't just survive the lion's den. He shaped history because of the prayers that came before it. His victories were not sudden, they were rooted in rhythm. He didn't wait for crisis to seek God. He made it his habit to come first, and because he put God first, God placed him above kings. When you begin with God, even your weakness becomes your weapon. You walk into the unknown with the assurance that you are not alone. You do not have to have all the answers. You only need the right alignment. And morning prayer aligns you with eternity. Let your first words be sacred, your first breath be intentional, your first thoughts be surrendered. The tone you set will echo through every moment that follows. Begin in peace, and you'll find peace has a way of following you. Begin in truth, and lies will lose their grip before they even reach you. Even the days that feel chaotic can bow to the soul who began in communion. Even the interruptions, the disappointments, the delays, they bend differently around a heart that is anchored. Prayer doesn't promise perfection, but it cultivates perspective, and perspective is often the very miracle we need most. Let your bed become an altar, your morning light a sanctuary, your first sip of water a holy offering. This is your sacred start. The world may pull you into hurry, but you are called to begin in Him. For in the stillness, He prepares you for every storm. Don't underestimate the battles avoided, the wounds healed, the wisdom granted, simply because you chose to start with prayer. Heaven moves in response to unseen obedience. Angels are assigned when you least expect it, and favor follows faithfulness even in the quietest routines. You are not just trying to survive the day, you are planting seeds that will bloom in time, seeds of trust, intimacy, devotion, and divine order. What begins in stillness often grows into strength, and what begins with God always ends in glory. So once again, even now begin. Bring the tired eyes, the anxious heart, the distracted mind. Offer what you have, and watch what God does with it. Morning by morning, grace will rise to meet you. There is something sacred about the way light pours in during the early morning. Not just on your walls, but upon your soul. It's as if God paints your spirit before the day begins, using peace as his brushstroke and mercy as his hue. You don't just witness a sunrise, you witness the steady unfolding of grace. And in that stillness you remember, you are deeply seen, wholly known, and fully loved. Beginning your day in prayer doesn't remove your pain, but it reveals his presence within it. You may still carry questions, but now you carry them with the one who holds answers beyond your understanding. And somehow, even without clarity, you find comfort, because your trust is no longer tied to outcome, it's anchored in intimacy. When you place God first, you stop chasing approval from a world that never learned how to love unconditionally. You stop measuring your worth by what you accomplish before noon. You stop comparing your path to someone else's highlight reel. Instead, you wake up in the presence of a Father who already calls you enough. David cried out in the morning, not because he had it all together, but because he needed to be held together. His strength was not in the size of his army, but in the sound of his surrender. And because he prayed first, he fought from a place of rest. The battles came, but they did not crush him, because his heart stayed rooted in God's promises. You are not behind when you begin with God. You are aligned. You are not wasting time, you are investing it into eternity. While others run in panic, you walk in purpose. And that walk starts in prayer. The quiet hours before the world awakens are not empty. They are waiting to be filled with your communion. Your whispered praise becomes a melody heaven leans down to hear. Your fragile prayers become declarations in the Spirit. And your room becomes a temple where transformation begins. God isn't asking for perfection, just permission to lead. He doesn't need you to perform. He longs for your presence. Every time you come, he is already there, waiting, listening, loving, even on the days you forget how to speak. When you pray first, you're not escaping life. You are entering into it with holy perspective. You don't ignore reality. You invite divinity into it. You see your responsibilities, your family, your work, through the lens of sacred stewardship. And that view changes everything. The voice that first speaks to your soul in the morning often becomes the voice that echoes through your decisions all day. Will it be fear, shame, pressure, distraction, or the still, quiet voice of the shepherd? When you choose God first, you choose clarity over confusion, peace over panic, truth over noise. And that choice shapes more than your mood, it shapes your mission. Let the world wait 5 more minutes. Let your notifications stay silent, just a little longer. Let your soul return to the one who breathed it into existence. Because those few moments with God can do more than an entire day without him. Even when you don't feel holy, prayer makes space for holiness to enter. Even when you feel distant, prayer is the bridge that carries you back to closeness. Even when you are numb, your return to God softens what was hardening. You are never too far gone for a fresh beginning. This is the sacred rhythm of starting with God, not as a rule, but as a refuge. Not as a task, but as a treasure. Your soul was created for this rhythm, and it will hunger until it remembers. So return, not with pressure, but with peace. Return without guilt, only grace. Let your first words be tender, your first breath be open, your first thoughts be given. For the one who formed you waits to walk with you again and again. There is a shift in your soul the moment you choose stillness over speed, presence over pressure. The world rushes to compete, compare, and control. But when you pray first, you surrender all of that at heaven's feet. You let God rearrange what you thought mattered most, and suddenly, peace becomes more important than performance. To put God first is to say, I cannot do this without you, and I will not pretend I can. It is a confession that feels like rest, the release of trying to carry what only grace can hold. In the world's eyes, it may look like slowing down, but in God's kingdom, it's the very thing that accelerates you toward your purpose. Jesus withdrew often, not out of weakness, but to remain filled with strength. He knew that what the Father gave in secret was greater than what the crowds could offer in praise. Before the miracles, before the sermons, before the steps, there was always stillness, and in that stillness, glory was born. This is why your mornings matter, not just for what you do, but for who you become. You become rooted, stable, aware of heaven's presence. You begin your day from a place of fullness, not fear. And in that fullness, you love better, serve deeper, speak with more grace. The first words you speak each day shape the atmosphere of your heart. Will you speak worry or worship? Will you rise in panic or in praise? Your answer begins at the altar of your first breath. God isn't watching your schedule. He's watching your surrender. He isn't counting minutes. He's holding moments. And every moment you begin with Him, you declare to the world that your life belongs to something greater, that you are more than your calendar, more than your tasks, more than your plan. There is holy resistance in beginning with God. Resistance against distraction, chaos, fear, and noise. Resistance against a culture that worships doing more, having more, proving more. But when you choose God first, you become someone who carries peace into the very places where peace is most needed. Your life becomes a sanctuary. Your voice becomes a vessel. Your presence becomes an invitation for heaven to move. People may not see what changed, but they will feel it, because when your day starts in sacred communion, it leaves a fragrance of God's nearness everywhere you go. You become a quiet light in a loud world. Daniel didn't wait until trouble came to build his prayer life. He built it brick by brick, morning by morning. And because he began with God in private, he stood with God in public. His prayers became his legacy. His faithfulness became his promotion. There is something holy about meeting God when the world is still asleep. It's as if heaven draws near with even more tenderness, leaning in to hear the prayers that echo through empty rooms and quiet hearts. In those moments, something eternal awakens. You are reminded that you were created for more than survival. You were created for intimacy. Even if your prayer is just a few words, even if your heart feels tired, God honors the beginning. He blesses the offering. He sees what no one else does, the effort it takes to choose Him before anything else. And He multiplies that choice into peace, strength, and clarity for the road ahead. The devil doesn't fear your busyness, he fears your stillness with God. Because in that stillness you remember who you are. In that quiet you hear what truly matters. And in that presence you become immovable. So once again, choose the altar over the agenda. Let your feet touch the floor only after your heart has touched heaven. Let your first conversation be upward, and let your whole day rise from that holy beginning. There are mornings when your hands tremble not from cold but from carrying the weight of yesterday into today. You sit in silence, unsure what to pray, but the Spirit speaks through sighs too deep for words. And even there, in the quiet groaning of your soul, God meets you with gentleness. He lifts the weight not all at once, but with grace that matches each breath. Prayer is not about saying the right thing. It's about showing up with your whole self. With your distractions, your doubts, your delays. God doesn't wait for your perfection. He honors your presence, because what He desires most is not performance, but closeness. When you start your day with Him, you realign your heart with what is eternal. You step out of survival and into surrender. You walk not in your own power but in the flow of divine wisdom, and that changes how you respond to every moment that follows. You do not need fancy words to open heaven. You only need an honest heart. Some of the most powerful mornings begin with nothing but, "Lord, help me," and heaven moves at the sound of that whisper. Because your humility draws God's mercy like water to dry land. There's something miraculous about how prayer softens what was rigid just moments before. The bitterness loosens its grip. The fear begins to fade. The anger, no longer your master, becomes something God transforms. To pray first is to say, God, I give you my thoughts before they spiral, my mouth before it speaks, my decisions before they wander. It's giving the keys to the one who knows the road better than you. And when he drives, you find peace even when the path is unfamiliar. You find rest even when the journey feels long. David knew the secret, not just to sing but to seek, not just to win but to wait, not just to rise but to remain close. His heart belonged to God before the crown ever did. You don't have to wait for a crisis to remember him. The more you begin your day in prayer, the more you carry heaven with you into every room. Your presence shifts things because it carries his. Your words begin to drip with peace because they echo his tone. In a world obsessed with multitasking, prayer is your holy refusal. Your refusal to rush past the sacred. Your refusal to ignore your spirit. Your declaration that intimacy matters more than urgency. Let your first breath be holy. Let your first thought be gratitude. Let your first word be Jesus. And in that simple choice, you lay a foundation that cannot be shaken. When you begin with God, you enter your day with an unseen army. Angels are assigned to roads you haven't walked yet. Protection flows before your feet hit the ground, and favor follows those who follow him. You may still face resistance, but now you're covered. You may still feel weak, but now you're held. You may still encounter trials, but now you're not alone. And that difference changes everything. So once again, don't delay. Begin before the scroll, before the schedule, before the storm. Begin with the one who holds it all, and watch how everything else begins to fall into place. The world may greet you with noise, but God waits in stillness. Before your phone lights up, before demands shout your name, heaven whispers, "Come sit with me." That gentle call is not a command, but an invitation into rest, into peace, into clarity. And when you answer it, you remember that being is greater than doing. There's a holy wisdom in beginning slowly, when everything around you urges you to rush. God does not compete with chaos. He invites you to rise above it, and that rising happens not through striving but surrender. You don't conquer the day by controlling it. You conquer it by committing it to God. Prayer is how you hand God the brush before you try to paint your day. It's how you place the pen back into his hands before you write your own version of control. Every time you pray first, you say, "Lord, I want your design, not mine." And he, in love, draws beauty from the places you thought were blank. To put God first isn't about getting everything right. It's about giving him everything real. The anxiety, the anticipation, the fatigue, the fear, he wants all of it. He wants your heart raw, not rehearsed. And in that authenticity, your soul is softened and made strong. Daniel prayed not because his life was easy, but because his life was dependent. His devotion didn't change with convenience. His rhythm of prayer wasn't altered by threat or applause. And because he prayed first, God stood beside him when the lions came. The first 10 minutes you give to God will shape how you carry the next 10 hours. Even 5 whispered sentences can build a foundation that fear cannot shake. Your heart learns to lean, to listen, to slow down, and in that stillness, you receive strength you didn't even know you needed. When you pray first, you step into alignment. Heaven bends to meet you there. Divine strategies unfold in silence, and clarity comes, not as lightning, but as light slowly rising over a quiet field. You were never meant to navigate this life alone, not even the simple days. There's power in letting God go before you, in allowing him to walk into the meeting, the classroom, the waiting room ahead of you. And when you do, you realize you're no longer reacting, you're responding from a place of peace. Let your room become your altar. Let your silence become your surrender. Let your breath become your worship. For the Holy Spirit moves wherever he's invited to dwell. God is not measuring your eloquence. He is measuring your openness. He sees the weight in your chest, the fog in your mind, the ache in your spirit. And still he draws near, not to fix you like a problem, but to love you like a child. There is no shame in needing him first. Some days you'll wake up ready, other days you'll wake up weary, but all days can begin in the presence of the one who renews your strength. And that renewal is what carries you through the unknown. It doesn't matter if yesterday was a failure. It doesn't matter if last week felt dry. Mercy is new every morning because God is not limited by your past. What matters is that you begin again, right here, right? So open your heart like a window to the light. Speak His name before the world speaks over you. Let your first response be reverence. For in that sacred beginning, everything shifts. There is a gentle miracle hidden in every early hour, not loud or flashy, but steady and life-giving. It's the miracle of remembering who you are before the world tells you otherwise. In that first stillness, God restores what time, pressure, and performance try to steal. He reminds you that you are chosen, not because of what you do, but because of who He is. The soul, like a garden, needs morning light to grow toward heaven. If you wait too long, the weeds of worry begin to take over. But when you pray first, you clear space for truth to take root. And that truth becomes your defense, your direction, your daily bread. Jesus didn't pray because He lacked. He prayed because He loved. He longed to be with the Father more than He longed for applause, answers, or ease. In the quiet places, His power was renewed. And that same renewal is available to you every single morning. When you begin with God, you reclaim what the enemy tried to rush. You stop running from peace and start walking with purpose. Your breath slows, your heart listens. Prayer is not a pause from your day. It is the place your day begins. Without it, you're left to guess. With it, you walk with guidance. And that difference will show up in every decision you make. Daniel opened his windows toward Jerusalem not to be seen, but to stay focused. His gaze wasn't on danger, it was on destiny. The posture of his prayer determined the power of his peace. And your posture, too, becomes your place of strength. Let your first thoughts be soaked in surrender. Before you reach for your to-do list, reach for truth. Before you answer to people, answer to the one who holds your soul. This is how you remain unshaken in a shaking world. The moments you give to God in secret will manifest as wisdom in public. Your inner altar becomes the lamp for your outer path. And the world will wonder how you carry such calm, not knowing you met with the King before you left the room. This is the beauty of always praying first. You don't have to come with confidence, just consistency. God is not impressed by flawless words, but by faithful hearts. Even if your voice trembles, your spirit grows stronger, because presence with Him always transforms. Some days your prayers will overflow with gratitude. Other days they'll be soaked in grief. But both are welcome at the feet of Jesus. Both are precious in the sight of the Lord. He longs to carry what you've been dragging. He longs to quiet what's been shouting inside of you. He longs to give clarity where confusion has grown thick. And it all begins when you say, "Here I am, Lord," again. Make it your rhythm. Make it your lifeline. Let it be the song that starts your every morning. For the one who meets you there is never late, never cold, and never tired of hearing your voice. You may not feel different right away, but over time, your spirit becomes stronger, your thoughts clearer, your heart softer. That's what daily prayer does. It shapes who you are becoming, one morning at a time. There is power in choosing quiet before the clamor begins. Before the headlines, before the notifications, before the pressure, there is a holy pause, a space where God gently gathers the broken pieces you forgot you dropped. And in His hands, nothing is too scattered to be restored. To pray first is not just a habit, it is an act of holy resistance. It pushes back against fear, before fear even gets a voice. It silences lies before they form words in your mind. And it awakens truth before you speak your first sentence to the world. When you give God your morning, you invite heaven into everything that follows. From the smallest tasks to the hardest decisions, you begin with the one who already knows the outcome. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are responding with wisdom from above. And that response is laced with peace. God does not require you to show up polished. He invites you to show up present, with sleepy eyes, messy thoughts, and a heart that's still waking up. He doesn't need a sermon from you. He just wants your nearness, because love listens more than it lectures. The first 10 minutes with God can alter the next 10 hours of your life. They realign what was crooked in your heart. They soften what was bitter. They prepare you to carry light into the places where shadows still linger. Jesus taught his disciples to pray before he taught them to preach. He showed them how to connect with the Father before they ever stepped into crowds. Because without connection, there is no true direction. And without direction, even good intentions lose their way. You were not created to hustle your way into peace. You were made to receive it, first thing, every day. And prayer is the place where that reception happens, where heaven bends down and hands you strength for what's ahead. Daniel's windows stayed open because his heart stayed open. Even when threatened, he did not shut the flow between his soul and heaven. He knew that communion with God was not a convenience, it was a calling. And that calling is on you too. You don't need to wait for Sunday to meet with God. You don't need a sanctuary or a crowd. Your bedroom becomes sacred ground when you whisper his name. Your kitchen table becomes an altar when you invite him to sit beside you. To pray first is to prioritize your eternal identity over your temporary reality. It reminds your soul that you are not defined by tasks or failures. You are defined by love, by grace, by the one who calls you mine. And that truth steadies you. When you skip prayer, you don't lose God's love. You miss his peace. You miss the warmth he was ready to pour over your anxious thoughts. You miss the wisdom that could have protected your steps. And yet even then, he waits for you, not with shame but with open arms. Let your first words each morning be sacred seeds. Seeds of gratitude, surrender, hope and trust. What you plant in the first hour will bloom across the rest of your day. And your garden of thoughts will grow with whatever you choose to sow. He is already there, before you wake. Already loving, already listening, already planning goodness for your day. All he asks is that you meet him. Not perfectly, just first. Every day begins with a door, and prayer is the key that opens it to heaven's presence. Before you face people, problems or pressure, God invites you to sit with him, not to fix everything but to fix your gaze. Because when your eyes are on him, your steps find peace. To pray first is to remember that strength doesn't come from sleep alone. It comes from surrender. Your body may be rested, but without prayer, your spirit is still weary. God restores the part of you no one else sees. He strengthens the soul that smiles in public but sighs in silence. Jesus never rushed past the Father to start his day. Even when the crowds pressed in, he withdrew to quiet places. He knew that divine power flowed from private communion. And in the secret place, his spirit stayed. You are not weak because you need God. You are wise because you seek him. The strongest people are not those who carry the most, but those who know who carries them. And prayer is how you place every burden back where it belongs. Not on your back, but in God's hand. Before the day begins demanding things from you, let God fill you. Fill your mind with truth, your heart with peace, your spirit with clarity. What begins in God never ends in confusion. What begins in prayer ends in power. Daniel didn't wait for the crisis to start praying. He prayed through the quiet seasons too. His power didn't begin in the lion's den. It was forged in mornings of devotion. Faith built in stillness is the kind that stands in storms. And that kind of faith is available to you. You don't need a perfect setting to create a sacred space. A whispered prayer over coffee. A pause before the news. A soft God, I need you before the world starts shouting. Prayer isn't always poetic. Sometimes it's broken. Sometimes it's tired. But God receives every word with tenderness. Every sigh with understanding. Every tear with love. When you pray first, you remind your soul that you are not alone. That you are led, protected, cherished, seen. The chaos doesn't disappear, but the fear loses its grip. Because now your anchor is set in something eternal. Let the first name on your lips be his, not out of habit, but out of hunger. A hunger to hear what he's saying before anyone else speaks. A hunger to remember what really matters. There is something sacred about choosing God in the shadows of morning. It is not flashy, it is not loud, but it is deeply powerful, and all of heaven leans in. Every day you choose who gets your first attention. Let it be the one who holds time, not the one who tries to steal it. Let it be the one who gives peace, not the one who provokes pressure. Let it be God, always God, first. And if you missed him yesterday, he's still here today. He didn't walk away in disappointment. He waited with love. The invitation never expires. The door is always open. Sometimes you wake up and the heaviness is already there. Before the sun rises, before the thoughts form, before your feet touch the floor, it lingers like a cloud you can't shake. But prayer is where the cloud begins to break. Even if the words come slowly, even if they come with tears, God receives them, and he answers with something deeper than ease. He answers with his presence. To pray first is to put your spirit before your schedule, to say, Lord, I need alignment before assignment. It is choosing foundation over urgency, because without the root of prayer, everything else withered. Jesus knew the power of early intimacy with the Father. Before miracles, before meals, before movements, he sought solitude and divine connection, and when the day came at him fast, he faced it full, not frantic. His strength was not from strategy, but from stillness. You are not too busy to pray, you are too in need not to. It's not about fitting God in, it's about giving him the center. When he is first, everything else finds its place. The chaos becomes clearer, the pressure becomes lighter, and the heart becomes calmer. Let your room be your sanctuary, even for 5 minutes. Let your sigh become a sacred sound. Let your I don't know how to pray become Lord, I'm here. And that is more than enough. Daniel prayed through decree and danger because he had practiced presence in the peaceful days. His intimacy with God wasn't reactive, it was rooted, and roots hold you when storms arrive. You don't grow in the storm, you reveal what was planted before it. Prayer prepares you for conversations you haven't had yet. It gives you grace for the difficult people, courage for the unclear decisions, and peace for the long waits. It wraps your heart in divine perspective before emotion takes the lead. It reminds you who you belong to. You're not praying to be seen, you're praying to stay sane. You're not praying to earn favor, you're praying to remember who gives it. You're not praying to escape reality, you're praying to reshape how you face it. And in that reshaping, your world changes. The enemy wants your mornings rushed, distracted, and loud, because he knows how powerful they are when they're surrendered. He knows that a praying person is a dangerous person, one who walks in peace when others panic, one who listens to God more than their fear. There is healing in giving God your first words, even if they're weary, even if they're messy, even if they're silent. Prayer is where burdens melt, not because the problem vanishes, but because God steps in. His presence doesn't always remove the fire, but it walks you through it. He doesn't promise ease, but he always promises nearness, and that nearness is enough. Some mornings you'll overflow with praise, other mornings you'll just sit in stillness and breathe. But both are prayer, both are sacred to God. Start today again, even if you missed it yesterday. Start small, start soft, but just there's something sacred about starting your day in the unseen. The world hasn't spoken yet, but heaven already has. God's voice doesn't compete with noise. It waits for your stillness. And when you come quietly, even just for a moment, you enter holy ground. You may think prayer needs perfect words, but God is moved by honest ones. He meets you in brokenness more tenderly than in performance. There's no script required when the heart is open. Just presence, just surrender, just realness. To pray first is to anchor before you sail. Without that anchor, you drift with every wave of opinion, stress, and distraction. But with it, you remain steady even when the currents rise. And that steadiness becomes your strength. Jesus often prayed when it was still dark, not just because of the hour, but because the darkness was where intimacy flourished. Before the light touched the land, he had already touched the Father's heart. That communion became his compass, and it can be yours too. When you offer God the first minutes of your morning, you're giving him your clearest altar, the altar before your thoughts scatter, before the noise begins, before the demands rise like army. Daniel didn't just pray once when crisis came. He had a rhythm, a habit, a devotion that nothing could break. And that rhythm carried him through what would have crushed most men. He was unshaken because he was already grounded, not in his position but in God's presence. You don't have to feel holy to enter holy space. Prayer isn't a reward for the worthy. It's the refuge for the weary. It's not reserved for perfect days, but especially for the messy ones. And God doesn't meet you with a checklist. He meets you with compassion. When you begin in prayer, you begin with alignment. You silence every lie before it has power. You untangle every fear before it roots itself. And you welcome wisdom before emotion takes control. There is no shame in starting small. One breath, one verse, one whisper of Jesus, help me. He hears you. He honors that offering. He fills the space you give him. Your morning doesn't need to start with answers. It starts with acknowledgement that you are not God, and that's the best news of all, because he carries what you can't. He knows what you don't. Every room can be a sanctuary when the heart kneels. Every sigh can become incense when given in surrender. Every tear can turn into testimony when placed in his hands. Prayer transforms the ordinary into the eternal. The enemy wants your mornings because they're the seedbed of your strength. But you don't have to give them away. Guard them like treasure. Offer them like worship. You are not behind. You are not late. As long as you breathe, you can begin again. And God will meet you right where you are, not where you think you should be. The first voice you listen to often determines the path your heart walks. If it is the voice of the world, your soul starts racing. But if it is the voice of God, your soul begins resting. That's why the morning is not just a moment, it's a decision. To pray first is to surrender your perspective before your plans take hold. It's trusting that God's wisdom is wider than your worry, that his timing is better than your urgency, that his ways are always higher, even when they're slower. Jesus never began with the crowd. He began with the Father. He didn't move from exhaustion. He moved from overflow. His strength wasn't drawn from sleep, but from sacred communion. And in that stillness, he was filled before he poured out. You are not expected to carry this day alone. God never asked you to perform, only to be present. The pressure you feel may be real, but so is his peace, and peace is what he's offering, if you'll sit with him first. Prayer doesn't require an hour, but it does require intention, a whispered surrender over coffee, a silent breath as the sun rises, a soft moment where your eyes meet his. Daniel kept praying even when it wasn't safe, because to him God's presence was safety. His peace wasn't in protection from danger, but in proximity to the divine. That closeness gave him courage the world couldn't comprehend, and that same courage is available to you. Before you speak to anyone, speak to the one who already understands. Before you check the time, check your heart. Before you rush into duty, return to devotion. That shift in priority changes the entire atmosphere of your life. You don't need the perfect words. You just need a willing heart. The Father reads what your mouth cannot form, and he holds every unspoken need like treasure. The world will try to pull you in 100 directions before breakfast. But when you begin in prayer, you rise with focus. You move from a place of peace. You carry a quiet fire that the world cannot put out. There's something holy about choosing God before you choose anything else. Not out of guilt, but out of love. Not to earn something, but to stay connected to everything that matters. That connection becomes your lifeline. Some mornings you may feel strong, others fragile, but all mornings are sacred when you bring them to God. He honors your consistency more than your eloquence. He meets you in your rhythm, and slowly, your rhythm becomes refuge. Prayer reshapes your thoughts before they spiral. It heals your heart before bitterness takes root. It replaces reaction with reflection. And it reminds you, you are deeply loved. You don't have to have it all figured out today. You just need to know who to walk with. And if you walk with him first, everything else will follow in grace. Let today begin at his feet. When you wake and the world is still quiet, heaven is already listening. The stillness is not empty. It is filled with divine invitation. You're not just waking your body, you're awakening your spirit. And the first step is whispering his name. To pray first is to invite God into the center, not the sidelines. It's telling him, you don't just get what's left, you get what's first. That sacred exchange sets the tone for every conversation and every decision. It makes your heart steady before the storm even begins. Jesus made space for prayer, even when the schedule was full. He rose before the sun, not because he had to, but because he longed to. That longing shaped his mission more than any miracle, and that same longing is forming in you when you choose him early. You may think your prayers are small, but they shift eternal things. Every whispered surrender rewrites your atmosphere. Every quiet thank you invites the kingdom into your reality. And every morning you return, heaven draws close. The day hasn't started until you've breathed with God. The to-do list can wait. The rush can wait. But your soul, it cannot wait to be reminded of who it belongs to. Daniel's story didn't begin in the lion's den. It began in daily devotion. Before he stood with courage, he knelt with consistency. His strength wasn't sudden, it was seasoned. And the same pattern is forming in your life, one morning at a time. Don't underestimate the power of 5 minutes. 5 minutes of surrender can undo hours of fear. 5 minutes of stillness can anchor an entire day. 5 minutes with God can shape a life of peace. Prayer doesn't need drama. It needs honesty. God's presence is not impressed by performance. It is moved by proximity. Just come close and he will come even closer. Start your day by being still, even if the world is spinning. Start your day by being quiet, even if your mind is loud. Start your day by letting love find you before fear does. Because fear always flees where love dwells. The enemy fears a soul who wakes up and prays before doing anything else. Because that soul is grounded. That soul is listening. That soul is no longer reactive. It is anchored. You weren't created to carry your day alone. You were created to walk it hand in hand with the one who holds it all. His strength is your portion, and prayer is how you receive it. Let the word be the first voice you hear. Let his promises wash over you before doubt has a chance to rise. Let your mind find shelter before the winds begin to howl, and that shelter will hold all day long. He is not waiting for perfection. He is waiting for connection, not for performance, but for presence. And the moment you show up, he surrounds you with peace. This is the miracle of morning prayer. When you wake up weary, prayer becomes the breath that revives your soul. You don't need to feel strong to show up. You only need to be willing. God meets you in the trembling just as much as in the triumph. He doesn't need your perfection. He only wants your presence. To begin the day in prayer is to resist the rush of the world with the rhythm of heaven. It's a declaration that stillness is more powerful than striving, that sacred pauses shape stronger hearts than anxious movement ever could, and that your strength is found not in doing but in dwelling. Jesus modeled rest before he modeled results. He taught from a place of fullness, not exhaustion. His ministry was not reactionary. It was rooted in intimacy, and that intimacy began with moments no one else saw. You don't have to earn the right to pray. You were born with it. Through grace, you're already invited. Through love, you're already welcomed. Through faith, you are already heard. The alarm clock doesn't determine your peace. God's presence does. And even if your body woke tired, your spirit can rise strong, because one moment with him can restore what sleep could not. One whisper of his love can realign your whole heart. Daniel knew the secret. Prayer was not an obligation, but a lifeline. It wasn't a backup plan. It was the first move. And even when threatened, he didn't hide. He kept his window open to heaven. Because when God is first, fear loses its place. Sometimes prayer begins with silence, and that's holy too. Sometimes you just sit and breathe and he meets you there. There are no requirements to impress him, only the courage to come. And the coming is where miracles begin. You're not behind. You're not too late. God doesn't measure devotion by your timing. He measures it by your heart. And your heart still belongs to him. Begin your day by lifting your thoughts before lifting your phone. Let his words shape your vision before the world colors it with fear. Let him speak identity before insecurity has a chance to whisper. And you will walk into the day with heaven's clarity. The moments before the world wakes are sacred. They are moments where heaven leans low, where God speaks in the quiet before the clutter comes, and where you are reminded you are not alone. Prayer isn't about fixing your feelings. It's about forming your foundation. It steadies you before the winds come. It roots you before the questions rise. and it calms you before the day begins to stir. Even if the day ahead is full of unknowns, God is already there. He goes before you, stands beside you, and walks within you. You don't face anything alone, and that truth is what prayer helps you remember. So start again, even if yesterday felt empty, even if this morning feels heavy. Start again, and you'll find Him waiting. Before the sun lights the earth, let the light of God warm your spirit. In those sacred minutes between sleep and decision, your soul longs for Him, not for answers, but for assurance. Not for plans, but for peace. Prayer doesn't require energy, it creates it. You may come tired, unsure, scattered, but as you sit before the Father, things begin to settle. Your heart realigns, your breath slows, your mind softens. Jesus didn't start His day from a place of pressure. He started from presence. That's how He could walk through storms without sinking. That's how He could face rejection without retreating. Because He had already received what the world could never offer: intimacy with the Father. When you pray first, you place your feet on unshakable ground. You no longer walk through the day guessing who you are. You walk knowing you are chosen, beloved, and strengthened, and that knowing becomes your compass. Daniel's power wasn't forged in public, but in private. His strength didn't begin when people noticed. It began when he knelt in silence. That rhythm built resilience, and the same rhythm is shaping you day by day. You don't need a grand beginning, just a faithful one. Whisper, "Lord, I'm here," before the rush begins. Sit in His stillness before you face your screen, and let Him speak before the world has a chance to interrupt. God honors small beginnings wrapped in sincerity. He sees your effort. He hears your sighs. He knows when you choose Him above everything else. Even if your morning is filled with noise, let prayer carve out silence in your spirit. Let that silence become a sanctuary, a place where fear dissolves, a place where clarity returns. There is a strength that doesn't look like energy. It looks like peace. A strength that doesn't roar. It steadies. That's the strength you carry when you pray first. That's the strength that sets you apart. You are not praying to earn His love. You are praying because you're already loved, and loved people listen, trust, and rest. That's the beauty of your morning, yes. Before you give yourself to the day, give yourself to God. Before you pour out, be poured into. Before you show up for others, sit with the one who shows up for you. That order shifts everything. There's something holy about choosing stillness in a culture that prizes speed. There's something sacred about putting God first when everything else demands your attention. And there's something powerful about remembering that peace is found, not chased. It's found in Him. Let today begin in surrender, not strategy. Let it begin in stillness, not striving. Let it begin with God, and you'll see everything changes from there. This morning, as your eyes opened, heaven already had your name in mind. You were not forgotten overnight. You were not overlooked in your sleep. You awakened into mercy, fresh and waiting at your feet. The first breath of the day is not just oxygen. It is opportunity, a chance to pause before performance, a moment to touch heaven before tasks, a sacred breath to say, "God, I'm here." When you pray first, you are not escaping life. You are stepping into it fully, with your heart tuned, your mind renewed, and your spirit anchored in what is eternal. Jesus didn't need the crowds to feel called. He needed the Father. That daily communion kept Him from being defined by voices that shouted or hands that praised. He walked through every moment already filled, and you can too. Daniel's power wasn't in his ability. It was in his availability. He was available to God again and again, regardless of consequence. He didn't just kneel in crisis, he knelt in habit, and that habit became his victory. Prayer is not about fixing your world. It's about letting God hold it. You don't carry the burden, you carry the surrender. You don't need all the answers, you need His presence. And His presence is always available at the beginning. The world will offer you urgency, but God offers you clarity. The world will rush you into reaction, but God invites you into response, calm, rooted, wise. Let the Word of God be your morning mirror. See your reflection through the eyes of love, not lack. Let your identity rise from Scripture, not circumstance. And let your soul remember, you are not walking alone. Prayer first means decisions later. Carry peace. Conversations hold grace. Reactions turn into wisdom. And fear loses its grip before it ever speaks. There is a reason the enemy fights your mornings. Because mornings shape destiny. But when you choose God first, you disarm every lie before it forms. You clothe yourself in truth before doubt arrives. You say, "This day is yours, Lord," and truly mean it. Even in your weakness, morning prayer is your strength. Even in your silence, God listens. Even in your wandering thoughts, He stays near. There is no part of you too messy for Him to meet. This morning is not just a beginning, it is a covenant. A quiet agreement that today you will walk differently. Not rushed, but led. Not alone, but covered. So as the sun begins to rise or the sky stays gray, may your soul still shine with divine remembrance. That He who holds the galaxies also holds your schedule. That the one who formed you is the same one who waits for you each morning. And He waits, not with judgment, but with joy. May today begin in surrender and continue in grace. May your first thought be Jesus, and your last be gratitude. May peace mark your pace, and prayer protect your path. In Jesus' holy and faithful name. There's something unshakable about a heart that bows before the day begins. It's not that the storm won't come, but that the soul will not scatter. When God is first, your steps are not determined by fear. They are ordered by grace, slow and steady. Prayer transforms the anxious mind into a sanctuary of peace, not because the world becomes quieter, but because you become anchored. The chaos no longer defines you. Christ does, and in His name you find courage for whatever comes next. Jesus never rushed into ministry. He retreated into communion. The more that was demanded of Him, the more deeply He withdrew to pray. He knew that miracles did not flow from movement alone, but from stillness with the Father, and that stillness is still available to you. Begin your day with the hands of your heart open. Don't grip the outcome. Release it. Don't wrestle for control. Surrender it. Let prayer be the place where striving ends and trust begins. Daniel didn't wait until he was in trouble to speak with God. He was already in relationship. His strength in the den was built in the quiet places. His boldness in public came from faithfulness in private. And your consistency will carry you through what your strength never could. You don't need loud faith to be heard by heaven. You just need sincere surrender. Even if your voice trembles, even if your words are few, let prayer be your compass, not your last resort. Let it lead you before you wander. Let it guide you before confusion has a chance to take root. And let it hold you steady when the road is unclear. There is no shame in needing Him every single morning. That need is not weakness. It's wisdom. The more you depend on God, the more unshakable you become. Because your foundation is eternal. Prayer first means peace first. It means your soul is not waiting on perfect conditions to rejoice. It means you know who holds the future, so you don't have to fear the present. That is freedom, and it's found in Him. Let your mornings be more than routine. Let them be relationship, not an obligation, but a meeting place. Not a duty, but a delight. A holy rhythm that says, "God, you are worthy of my first breath." Even if yesterday was rushed, let today be different. Even if the past week was noisy, make this moment still. You are not behind, you're right on time for God's presence. And He receives you with joy, not judgment. He is not a distant king. He is a present Father. He doesn't wait for perfect words, but for honest ones. He doesn't need long prayers, but real hearts. And your real heart is exactly what He longs for. So begin again today, not in your own strength, but in His. Not for applause, but for alignment. And in the quiet, you will remember who you truly are. Every morning holds a decision, to walk with God or walk in your own understanding. One path is familiar but heavy. The other is holy and light. Prayer is how you choose the better way before your feet even move. You were never asked to carry the full weight of your day. You were invited to cast it at the feet of the one who is already holding what you fear, at the throne of mercy, where grace flows endlessly. Jesus found renewal, not in rest alone, but in relationship with his Father. He withdrew not to escape, but to embrace deeper clarity. Every quiet place became a launching ground, and that same invitation stands before you now. To pray first is to protect your joy before the world tries to steal it. It's building walls of truth around your soul. It's placing watchmen on your spirit to guard your peace. And it's letting God breathe into you before the world drains you. Daniel was surrounded by political chaos, yet his spirit stayed composed. He knew who he belonged to. He knew who wrote the final word. And that confidence was born in the secret place, long before the lions ever roared. Let the word of God rise before your worries do. Let the name of Jesus be the first thing on your lips. Let your mind kneel before your knees even touch the ground. That is how peace enters before problems have a chance. You don't need an hourglass or incense. You need intention, a heart turned upward, a mind stilled in surrender, a spirit willing to listen. Even if the room is noisy, make your soul a sanctuary. Even if your schedule is full, carve a space for stillness. Even if your emotions are unsteady, sit anyway. God meets you not in perfection but in pursuit. Prayer opens your eyes before the news opens your fears. It reminds you what's eternal before you chase the temporary. It lifts your gaze to what is above, and suddenly, the weight of the world no longer sits on your shoulders. Start your day with humility, and it will carry you farther than pride ever could. Begin with listening, and you will speak with wisdom. Sit before you run, and you will not collapse from spiritual exhaustion. Wait with God, and you will move with grace. He sees your early rising. He hears every sigh you don't speak aloud. He notices your effort to put him first, even when it's messy, and he delights in the nearness of your heart. You don't need to recite the perfect words, you just need to show up, over and over, even when you feel nothing, because faith grows not in the feeling but in the returning. Let this be your holy rhythm: stillness before steps, worship before worry, scripture before screen, presence before performance. God does not wait for you to be composed before he comes close. He meets you in the unraveling, in the messy beginnings, in the hesitant whispers. He welcomes the real you, the weary, the wandering, the unsure, and in return, he offers peace no performance can earn. To pray first is to draw a boundary around your spirit. It says, before the world speaks, I'll listen to heaven. It shields you from rushing into battles that don't belong to you, and it keeps you from pouring out what you haven't received. Jesus prayed not to prove his holiness, but to renew his nearness. He knew the secret wasn't in louder words, it was in deeper stillness. He rose before the chaos so he could walk through it undisturbed. And that same stillness is available to you every morning. You're not behind if all you do is sit and breathe in his presence. There's no scoreboard in the secret place. Just a Father who says, I'm glad you came, and that gladness fills the gaps your strength cannot. Daniel could have followed the pressure of the people, but he stayed faithful to the rhythm of prayer. Even when laws changed, his devotion didn't. He didn't look around for approval, he looked up for presence. And that upward gaze kept his soul steady in the storm. Your mornings are not just for planning, they're for planting. You sow trust when you choose prayer before panic. You sow peace when you begin with praise. And what you plant in secret, God waters in power. Let the silence of dawn be your sacred friend. Let it teach you that God speaks loudest in the stillness. Let it remind you that answers often come when you stop demanding them. And let it be the altar where you surrender what you can't carry. You don't need to wake up feeling ready. You just need to wake up willing to meet God, willing to be honest, willing to let him shape what comes next. Every morning is a chance to say, I trust you more than the news, more than the pressure, more than my emotions. It's a chance to anchor before you act, to receive before you respond, to be filled before you're pulled in 100 directions. Prayer doesn't require perfection, it requires participation. Your willingness is more valuable than your eloquence. Your return is more powerful than your performance. And God sees the heart behind your habit. Start by saying his name. Whisper it. Breathe it. Let it settle the unrest inside. Let it remind you that he is near. And he's not waiting with a clock. He's waiting with compassion. The battle isn't whether or not you feel spiritual, it's whether or not you show up. Every time you begin in prayer, you choose victory over vulnerability. You choose clarity over confusion. You choose Him over everything else. The world will offer you urgency, but God offers you alignment. The world will scream for your attention, but prayer whispers your identity. So pause, even now. Close your eyes, even for a breath. Let Him meet you where you are. And know this sacred beginning changes everything. There is power in beginning again, especially when that beginning is with God. You may not feel strong, but prayer never required strength, only surrender. You may not have answers, but prayer reminds you who holds them. And that reminder can carry you through the entire day. Jesus rose early, not to escape the world, but to align with heaven. He didn't seek silence to avoid pressure. He sought the Father to walk through it with peace. And in that early communion, He was filled, focused, and free. So can you be each time you put Him first? Prayer is not a transaction, it's a transformation. You don't come to check off a box, you come to be changed, to be softened where you're hard, to be lit again where you've gone dim. Daniel didn't gain courage in the lion's den. He brought it in with him. That kind of faith is not born in crisis, but built in consistency. Each morning, each prayer, each sacred habit shaped him, and God honored what was done in secret. You don't have to rush your mornings to be faithful. You just have to show up and be real. Even in sleepy eyes and quiet sighs, God draws near. He listens to hearts before He listens to words. Your emotions may shift like the wind, but prayer roots you like an anchor. It brings you back when your thoughts drift. It centers you when your soul wanders. It reminds you of who you are and whose you are. Let your first words be sacred, not scattered. Let your first thoughts be shaped by Scripture, not by screens. Let your first breath belong to God, not to pressure. These choices make the difference between peace and panic. Prayer is not about feeling perfect. It's about offering your presence. God sees when you choose Him over distractions. He knows how hard it is sometimes to just be still, and He celebrates every return to His feet. The weight you feel is not yours to carry alone. Lay it down at the altar of surrender. Hand over the burden before it becomes a breakdown, and trust that His strength is made perfect in your weakness. You don't need to perform for God. You are already precious in His sight. He's not grading your devotion. He's holding your heart, and His love is not fragile. It's fierce and unwavering. Even on the mornings when your faith feels thin, His grace is thick. Even when your prayers feel quiet, His attention is loud. Even when you wonder if He hears, He is already near. This is the mystery of mercy. Always close, always present. Start again and again and again if you must. There's never a wrong moment to come back to God. Today is another invitation to return, reset, and rest in Him. Not in tasks, not in timelines, but in truth. His truth over your thoughts, His peace over your plans. Let your prayer be a soft yes to His leading. Let your soul be still enough to listen. Let your heart be open enough to receive, and He will do what only He can do. There is a quiet kind of bravery in the one who wakes up and seeks God first. Before coffee, before chaos, before conversation, they choose presence. Not because life is easy, but because they know where strength begins. That kind of soul walks differently through the day. Jesus walked slowly because He prayed first. He didn't live in reaction. He lived in rhythm, a rhythm set by the Father's voice, not by the noise of the world. And you too can walk in that rhythm when prayer leads your morning. The Spirit does not need volume to move. He needs space. A soft whisper is enough. A surrendered heart is enough. A few honest words are more powerful than 1,000 well-rehearsed ones. Daniel's life wasn't free from pressure, but it was full of prayer. And that changed everything. He didn't bend to culture because he was already bowed before the throne. That posture gave him unshakable confidence. Prayer is where burdens fall off before the day has a chance to weigh you down. It's where guilt dissolves in grace, where striving melts into surrender, and where fear loses its voice. You don't need to be loud to be heard. God hears the internal groan, the whispered plea, the unspoken need. He reads the ache behind your silence, and He meets it with tenderness. Let today's prayer be real. Let it be messy if it has to be. Let it come from wherever you are. Tired, anxious, hopeful, numb. There is no version of you that God rejects. Prayer before decisions brings clarity. Prayer before confrontation brings humility. Prayer before planning brings peace. And prayer before panic brings protection. This sacred pause in the morning isn't a delay, it's a divine investment. It fills you with what cannot be shaken. It plants what cannot be stolen. And it reminds you that you are deeply loved. The first thing you give your attention to sets the tone for everything else. Let that first thing be Jesus. Let His name be your anchor. Let His presence be your home. You are not falling behind when you pause to pray. You are moving in alignment. You are not wasting time. You are protecting your soul. You are not being lazy. You are choosing wisely. The world rushes, but the Spirit restores. There is strength in restraint, in waiting, in listening before speaking, and in surrendering before striving. This is how the day becomes sacred, not because of what happens in it, but because of who you invite into it. Invite God first, and watch the atmosphere shift. Watch the pace change. Watch peace unfold where pressure used to reign. So before the sun fully rises, let your soul do the same. Rise in truth. Rise in stillness. Rise in the quiet confidence that God is already here. Let this be the day you stop living on empty. Let this be the morning you refuse to carry what only God can hold. You were never meant to run dry before noon. You were designed to be filled in the first light of dawn. Jesus didn't begin His day wondering what would come. He began by remembering who was with Him. The presence of the Father shaped His every move. The silence before the crowd gave Him power before He spoke. And in that sacred rhythm He remained unshaken. When you begin with prayer, you are saying, God, I choose trust before control. You are choosing wisdom before reaction. You are trading pressure for peace. And that trade changes everything. Daniel didn't let the weight of the empire define his choices. He let the weight of God's glory define his convictions. His courage was quiet, but it shook kingdoms. And your prayers, though whispered, can shift atmospheres too. The greatest strength you'll ever carry is the kind that comes from surrender. The kind built not in the spotlight, but in the secret place, where you fall to your knees before you rise to your feet. Where you say, God, this day is yours. I trust you first. Let your calendar wait while you center your heart. Let your worries be laid down at His feet. Let your breath slow, your soul settle, and your spirit remember. You were not created to carry chaos. You were created to commune with God. There is no morning too quiet for God to move in. No room too messy for Him to enter. No thought too scattered for Him to sort. He walks into every moment you invite Him into. And when you pray first, you create a holy echo through your day. A sound that carries peace into conversations. A melody of trust that sings louder than doubt. A steady beat that keeps you grounded even when storms rise. This is your invitation daily, freely, faithfully, to begin again in grace, to speak before the world does. To say, God, lead me before I try to lead myself. You don't have to impress Him. You don't have to be profound. You only need to be present. And when you are, He will do the rest. God delights in your showing up, even when your prayers feel incomplete. He honors your willingness, not your eloquence. He gathers your sighs and turns them into strength. He takes your quiet faith and builds mighty things from it. So before you go, take one more breath. Let it carry gratitude. Let it carry release. Let it carry this truth. You are. Today, let prayer be your compass. Let God be your beginning. Let peace be your portion. And let every step you take echo this sacred moment. You have placed Him first. Now watch Him carry you through everything else. May His presence surround you. May His favor follow you. And may His voice guide your every decision. In the name of Jesus, with a heart full of peace,